This is Aaron's opinion. This is Caroline Radio, 87.1 Bakersfield. And as I like to say, we'll be right back.
Your number one for variety. We are 87.1 Caroline Radio.
Back, listener, how are you? I'm Aaron Richmond. This is the Aaron's Opinion podcast on 87.1 Caroline Radio, KCGN Bakersfield, your home for all your variety hits. And also, by the way, on Blind Advocacy or Advocate Radio, Blind Advocacy Radio. Thank you so much to both of my stations, and thank you to Luis, and thank you to our Armando for helping me to produce these episodes. And if you're listening on one of the podcasting platforms, thank you for joining us. And if you're listening on YouTube, thanks. All right, we're back with Hermione from Germany. Before the break, she was saying how she wants to tell us more about why she feels that companies get into this situation where they develop a product that's not really accessible in the first place. Yeah, let's talk about that. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you for explaining it in a more fancy way, because I'm not native in English. So
well, you're welcome. And it wasn't. And by the way, it wasn't a fancy way. I was explaining it in a more of a English way. It was more of an English way of explaining it. Yes, you are welcome for that.
Okay. So let me see. So the more I worked on this field, the more I understood how much accessibility is left aside. I saw that designers, and not only designers, but a lot of people who are in charge of what we experience in the web, are just using simple guidelines like make the letters bigger, for example, or just put more contrast there. So I think that that's not enough. So before you launch a product, you have to test it. So that's how we do it, right? So before you launch something, even the smallest thing, you have to test it on users first. And the thing is that a few people test these products, like applications, for example, on blind or visually impaired people. So we have no idea how they interact with these products, how they navigate through them, or what their struggles are. So that's also why I wrote some articles about accessibility. And I saw that a lot of people read them. And that's why I also decided to start a blog with real interviews to, just to raise awareness and to show that things can get better on the internet. And yeah, I mean, the first problem for me is that there is no clear objective guidance on what constitutes an accessible website, right? So there's not enough clarity in the law to know what is accountable. And it's hard to blame someone in particular. So on the one side, we have small companies, startups, agencies, let's say, and they want to create interfaces, websites, or applications as quickly as possible. And of course, low in cost, right? And for them, time costs money. So they just skip the accessibility part because who has time / money for that, right? So companies skip that part because of money, time, and ignorance. So that's about companies. And now on the other side, we have the web designers, that accessibility is part of their job. It should be part of their job, right? Because they are the web designers. But they also choose to skip it most of the time because, as you said before, because of ignorance, because of they don't know. And as I said, there are guidelines, but they're a bit abstract for me and not so accurate. So sometimes it's also hard as a designer to stand up and say to your manager that, I also need that X amount of time to make this platform accessible. And I don't know, it doesn't have to be like this, because it should be part of best practice and not an additional line item to your website. So I think that web designers should stand up on this, should tell to their, managers or whoever is, how can I say it, like above of them, should stand up and say something about it. Because as I said, most of the companies just they don't have time, they don't have money for it, and they always make excuses. And I'm saying this from experience. They will always make an excuse to skip that part. Like, for example, that, okay, the contrast is okay, for example, or the letters are big enough, so it should be okay. And it's never okay, as you can imagine. And then the third part that I want to talk about, maybe it sounds a little harsh, but I believe that blind people, visually impaired people, should also take action on this. So when you cannot use a website, email them, ask them, like, why I cannot use your website, what happens with your website. If they don't answer and if they ignore you, then just do something about it. Tweet about that company, tell people that their website is inaccessible, write an article about it. Like, it's a bad thing that I will say, but just make them feel bad for not giving you access, because I assure you that there is no web designer that doesn't know that they have to build something, and if they build it, they have to make it accessible. Everyone knows it, that they have to make it accessible. They just choose to ignore it. Yeah, that's the thing that I want to say, especially to people that are listening, that they have to do something about it. When they have a problem, when they struggle using something, just tell it, just shout it, write about it, go to someone and tell about this problem. So yeah, so other people also know it. And when it's about a problem, people get together and try to fix it, right? So I think that if more people learn about your struggle, then the more people know about your struggle, I think that the more people are going to try and help you, and not you, but the whole community, right? So yeah, I spoke too much, sorry.
Not a problem. No worries at all. I want my guests to speak a lot, and all of the advice you gave was good. The greater reality in the United States is that blind people simply are fed up with things not working. So the greater reality as a blind person in America probably would not spend the time to email companies if things aren't working. Um, if we're not able to access something, usually that organization either goes out of business or they lose our business. So that tends to be what would happen. And the speaking up, I mean, it's the right thing to say, but I'm concerned on if it works, because oftentimes it's ignored, at least in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
But I don't understand why exactly. Like, it's an injustice, right? So
Well,
um,
but apparently not, because it continues to happen, and it's ignored because companies can because they can get away with it. And in the United States, we have, similarly in a sense to Germany, in America we have very strict standards for presenting legal cases. So it would be very hard for a single person to have a kind of a legal case or a formal complaint against any company.
Yeah, I understand.
Oftentimes, oftentimes, if it's that bad, it's a group of people who are coming together against the company as a group. But it would be quite, I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but it would be quite unprecedented and quite unusual for a single person to go against a company single-handedly. Simply, the person probably doesn't have enough money for a good enough lawyer, and a lawyer probably wouldn't take the case.
Yeah.
So it would, yeah.
So yeah, you know, you're right. I mean, I read about a story for a person who got into a court for, I don't know if I'm can I say like a company, a name of a company? Yeah, I think I can. Like they went into the court with Domino's Pizza. I don't know if you've heard about this story because they,
Probably, is it something that happened relatively recently?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
I remember that one. Yeah.
so yeah, they went into court with Domino's Pizza because their website was totally inaccessible.
Hmm. I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I forget what now. What was the result of it though? That's what
yeah,
I forget.
they won. Like not the Domino's Pizza, but the person who did the, you know, who went into court
Hmm.
won. So I mean that I know it's hard, right? And um, everywhere it's hard. I think not only in America, but here also in Germany, it's really hard to just hire a lawyer and not, especially for, you know, a normal person to hire a lawyer and go into court. It's really hard, and it's really stressful. So I'm not talking about going into court, right? um, I'm talking about make it stand out, write about it on Twitter, like write a
Right.
name.
No, no, that no, I certainly I got that. And my point that I made earlier was that a blind person in America would probably not spend the time to do it
Yeah,
unless they felt that there was a group backing them. You know, we have limited time, and
yeah,
oftentimes, and that is something that's frustrating that can happen in America. That happens every day. Cases cannot be heard. There's a lot of cases that probably should be heard and are not, because they just don't have the backing. They just don't have the money to back their side of the story. So
hmm,
it's a way of creating a fair and as equal, as fair as possible of a justice system for our country. But still, it's not perfect. Like any like any form of government, you know, it's still flawed. So there are many cases that are not heard that should be. Yes.
yes. So yeah, I understand. I totally understand. I'm just saying that, you know, sometimes even a small thing helps. Like I said,
Oh, definitely.
write about it on Twitter, name the company, right? Tag them. Uh,
Right.
and as I said, people when it's about these kind of things, like um, in Germany we say Solidarität. So for, I don't know the English word
Yeah.
for it.
Solidarité in French.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So when it's about that, you know, people are getting together and they fight for a.
Unity. Unity. Yeah.
Yes,
Come to unity. Yes, we say in English unity.
community. Yes. So I'm sure that people come together when it's for a good reason, right? So talk about it. Just say something about it. Stand for it, right? Just don't say that, you know, I couldn't use this and I couldn't access in that website or whatever product it is, right? Don't just say that it's okay, I will use another thing. No, go and email them. Do something about it. Just stand up for your you know, in your position, for example.
Sure. Yeah, that's good advice. Yes.
Yeah, I think that is the main thing that makes the difference, because um, people also don't know about it. So they think that it's okay, we will not get into the accessibility thing because, you know, um, there is a small portion of people that have this problem. But no, it's not a small portion of people. Like a lot, millions of people are
Yeah,
blind and are visually
and growing in the number. And this is a